Excuse me. Good evening. I would like to call to order the closed session for July 6, 2021. Can we have a roll call, please?
Sure. Commissioner Hill is absent. Commissioner Lemke?
Here.
Commissioner Beamsterfer? Here. Vice Chair Lori Van Arsdale? And Chair John Worth.
Here. And there is no commissioner currently participating by teleconference. All right, agenda item number 3, public comment period. There is a 3-minute per person time limit. All who wish to speak need to be recognized by the chair before speaking. Members of the public shall comply with the adopted rules of decorum. State your name and item you are commenting on before speaking. Are there any members of the public participating through teleconference that would like to comment on any items not on the agenda for closed session? I will open public hearing. Hearing none, seeing none, we'll close public hearing. Move to agenda item 4A, which is conference with legal counsel for anticipated litigation, and we will now go into closed session. not on the agenda. Are there any members of the public participating through teleconference that would like to comment on any items that are not on the agenda? Are there any e-comments?
No e-comments received for this section.
Anybody from the public? Seeing none, we will move to 12A for the Site Development Review 19-10, Conditional 010, Conditional Use Permit 19-009, and Tentative Parcel Map 37779 for Stetson Corner. Good evening.
Good evening, Chair, members of the Planning Commission and the community. I'm Monique Alanis Splater, the project planner for Site Development Review SDR 19-010, Conditional Use Permit 19-009, and Tentative Parcel Map TPM 37779 for Stetson Corner project. The project applicant is Ralph Depiche with Sage Invesco LLC. Property owner is Rancho McColland LLC and Micrometer Inc. The project location is 3255 and 3145 Stetson Avenue, located at the southeast corner of Sanderson and Stetson Avenues on approximately 8.7 acres. The project before you is a request to approve a 12-bay gas station, convenience store with 20 alcohol beverage license for the off sale of beer and wine, a drive-through fast food restaurant with vacuum stations and with existing proposed canopies. The project also includes a tentative parcel map to reconfigure parcels and relocation of the existing site, which we'll get into in the presentation. The property is approximately 8.7 acres and located at the southeast corner of Sanderson and Stetson in the city of Hemet. The site is about 2.25 miles southwest of downtown Hemet. The project site is approximately 1.25 miles south of State Route SR 74 and 0.8 east of the Hemet-Ryan Airport. The site is comprised of 2 existing parcels and currently consists of a combination of a vacant land and an existing industrial development. The eastern parcel is currently undeveloped. The eastern undeveloped area is gated and has 2 access driveways along Stetson to this vacant area. And the western portion of the site consists of an unpaved area used for overflow parking when the lot is full. The existing on-site industrial development consists of what is known as Micrometer Facility. The Micrometer Facility manufactures flow meters for liquid, steam, and gas flow measurements, and is an industrial development. It has consists with permanent buildings, temporary use areas. The existing buildings maintain 5 warehouses in the center of the site, and include ancillary buildings such as check-in. And the site was constructed between 1975 and through 1985. The development is one story with the exception of a cylindrical tower. The site is surrounded by existing development, including single-family residential uses to the north, south, and east of the site, and Page Plaza, a 40-acre commercial development directly to the west of the project site. Specifically, to the north is the Tierra Linda community for single-family residential. To the south is Willow Walk community, a single-family residential community, and to the east is Seven Hills community. To the west is Page Plaza, and then further to the northwest is also Stetson Crossing, which is an approved specific plan for commercial development. The property maintains a general plan land use designation of business park and is currently zoned M1 limited manufacturing. The request, the Planning Commission authority for the review this evening includes three parts. The first part is conditional use permit in accordance with section 90-1043.G5 to accommodate the gasoline service station with or without a convenience store. Additionally, pursuant to section 90-90.C, requires a conditional use permit for the sale of alcohol beverage on site or off-site consumption, as well as the drive-through restaurant. In this case, the proposed project includes a convenience store, drive-through fast food service, gas station, car wash, and the type 20 alcohol license request for the convenience store. The project also includes site development review. The Planning Commission has the authority to review and impose conditions of approval pertaining to the development of the operating conditions of the proposed use. The Planning Commission decision is final unless appealed to the City Council within 10 calendar days of the Commission's decision. The project also includes a tentative parcel map. The Planning Commission has the authority to review, consider, and approve, conditionally approve or deny the tentative map, and shall approve the tentative map based on findings that are outlined in the staff report. The project involves the construction of a 12-bay gas station, 4,088 square foot convenience store for 7-Eleven with type 20 ABC license, a 2,660 square foot drive-through fast food restaurant, and 3,590 square foot car wash with 21 self-serve vacuum stations with 20 vehicle stalls under a 3,096 square foot canopy. The total interior floor area of the buildings is 10,338 square feet, excluding the covered canopies. A total of 50 parking stalls will be provided for the project's proposed commercial uses on the western portion of the project site. The project also includes a relocation of the Micrometer parking lot. The Micrometer manufacturing facility is not proposed to be altered by the project, but the replacement parking would be included on the east end of the site, on the east side of the Micrometer facility. It would include a total of 208 parking spaces. The Micrometer portion of the project site would also retain 72 existing parking spaces. Overall, once developed, the project would include 304 parking spaces to serve both the Micrometer and the proposed commercial use. The project consists of a tentative parcel map to reconfigure 2 parcels totaling 8.7 acres into 5 parcels and 2 Sanderson Avenue right-of-way lettered lots for scenic highway setback purposes. As you can see here, the subdivision includes 5 parcels. Parcel 1 would service the gas pumps and convenience store. Parcel 2 is allocated for the car wash. Parcel 3 would include the drive-through fast food restaurant. And also, there would be a requirement for reciprocal parking and driveway access easements throughout the center. The existing western Micrometer parking lot would be relocated to Parcel 5 and would include a new 208 stall parking lot. The facility would remain on site. There are no changes to the Micrometer facility. However, the proposed project does demolish a portion of the existing Micrometer parking area for the replacement parking of the commercial site. I also wanted to mention a correction to the staff report. On the staff report, this graphic was illustrated showing the lot numbers tied to the tentative parcel map, and car wash parcel number 3 and 2 were transposed, were incorrectly illustrated. The graphic has been corrected as illustrated herein. The project, with regards to circulation, the project proposes 2 new driveways as well as a sidewalk corridor improvement on Sanderson Avenue. The southern driveway and Sanderson Avenue would be 30 feet wide and configured to provide right in, right out only turning movements. A raised median will be required on Sanderson Avenue to preclude southbound vehicles from entering the southern driveway and would provide for emergency access only. You would see the raised median is delineated in dark red along a little past the center line of Sanderson Avenue for illustrative purposes. The northern driveway would be right in only and would be angled to preclude either left in or right out movements. A meandering sidewalk would be proposed along Sanderson Avenue consistent with the sidewalk with the scenic highway setback. Additionally, accessible pedestrian pathways also proposed to connect the restaurant use and the project site from the sidewalk. Right-of-way dedication on Sanderson includes 50 feet of half-street improvements measured from the center line of the street, including a Class 2 bike lane on Sanderson Avenue. No new driveways would be added to Stetson Avenue, but the existing driveways would be improved to meet the site access needs for the project. The existing western driveway access to Stetson would be improved to 40 feet wide. Right-of-way improvements on Stetson Avenue proposed are 44 feet in width. However, the applicant will be required to dedicate an additional overall width of 50 feet right-of-way measured from the center line of the street. As part of the analysis for safety considerations, a queuing analysis was prepared for the Sanderson Avenue, Stetson Avenue intersection to assess adequacy of the northbound right and westbound left storage pocket at the intersection. As a result of the study, the project applicant shall provide the restriping of the westbound left turn lane to accommodate additional storage. The existing turn lane along Stetson Avenue shall be restriped to extend the westbound left turn lane to approximately 175 feet, thereby eliminating potential queuing restrictions. Additionally, the queuing analysis—
I'm sorry, real quick. Could you go back over that? That was the westbound left turn lane, so turning from Stetson south onto Sanderson?
Yes, that's correct.
Thank you.
Additionally, the queuing analysis concluded both the right turn and left turn pockets on Sanderson Avenue would be sufficient to support vehicular storage. No additional improvements beyond the median, raised median would be required, in addition to the right-of-way improvements. The project would also provide driveway access along Stetson Avenue for the proposed replacement parking lot in the eastern portion of the project site near the existing driveway curb cut. The driveway would include one gated single entry lane separated from two outbound lanes by a median. The gate would remain closed except as shift changes. If employees needed to access the parking lot outside of the shift change, a remote or access code would be required. To prevent vehicle queuing onto Stetson Avenue at the gated entrance, the gate would be designated to accommodate one car length on the project site. The outbound lanes would consist of one right lane and one left turn lane. Per the city standard requirements, the gate would also include a Knox box for emergency access. The proposed 7-Eleven convenience store, car wash, and drive-through restaurant will utilize a contemporary style architecture with cornice parapets in a variety of heights, stucco columns, aluminum cantilevered awnings, scored CMU, cement plaster, trellis panel, ribbed metal panes, and fabric awnings of self-service space. The Stetson Corner commercial buildings will utilize a consistent master color palette. So here we have the floor plan for the 7-Eleven. And in this graphical illustration is presented is the drive-through restaurant. Here is a general floor plan of the drive-through restaurant. It is going to be a future tenant. When that tenant comes in, it would be a final floor plan would be presented as part of the final tenant improvements during building plan check. In this illustration is the proposed car wash. The applicant has also provided 3D renderings of the car wash for illustrative purposes. And as presented here is the color palette for the commercial center. The illustration here is the proposed landscaping, which would be provided along the perimeter of the site and within parking medians and adjacent to the proposed structures. Vines and other landscaping will be provided to visually screen trash enclosures. Landscape bioretention basins are also provided within the landscape areas, providing visually pleasing stormwater drain treatment areas. In addition, trees will be planted throughout the project site in tighter groupings along the southern and eastern boundaries of the site to provide additional screening from adjacent residential uses. Sanderson Avenue is identified as scenic highway setback and is illustrated illustrated here on Sanderson Avenue within a 25-foot frontage and will comply with the scenic highway design criteria. The project does include a type 20 ABC license for off-sale of beer and wine for the convenience store. The site is located in a census tract 0433.16, which is according to the latest reports, allows for 2 off-sale licenses. On November 20th, the California Department of Alcohol Beverage Control reported that no off-sale license were issued in the census tract and would not create overconcentration or require a public convenience and necessity determination. Staff also verified last week that information was still valid and there were no changes. The convenience store would operate 24 hours a day. The police department has reviewed the proposal and hours of operation. No concerns were identified due to consistency with surrounding land uses and similar hours. But it's important to note that the state of California does require that the sale of alcohol beverages be limited or restricted from 6 a.m. To 2 a.m. 7 days a week. Oh, the state of California indicates that the sale of alcohol beverages is limited to between 6 a.m. to 2 a.m. So anything past 2 a.m. To 6 a.m., they would not be able to sail. On July 9th, the city gave public notice by advertising in the press enterprise and by mailing to the property owners and tenants within 500 feet of holding a public hearing, which the project would be considered by the Planning Commission. On July 11th, staff received a letter of opposition from Les Bono, who resides at 1255 Basswood Way. On July 12th, email correspondence was received from Jerry Cunningham, who resides at 2940 Jacaranda Way. That letter was also a letter of concern for the project and opposed to the project with similar concerns with regards to traffic, noise, and overall concerns with the environmental and safety. On July 19th, we received a letter of opposition from Delano and Delano with respect to the current staff report that is being presented. Delano and Delano also provided a letter to the city in regards to the environmental, which we'll cover. But this is a second letter from Delano and Delano, just in regards to concerns with the violations, potential. The letter indicates that the staff report outlined areas of the general plan and municipal code, and that the findings may not be adequate, as well as the EIR, which we will discuss further. Since then, staff did provide a copy of the staff report to Mr. Bono and Mr. Jacaranda, as well as try to answer some of the questions that they had. The project also includes an environmental impact report, which analyzed the environmental potential environmental constraints for the property. And in this, the process for the environmental impact report includes the notice of preparation, which was processed in accordance with CEQA guidelines 15082. And the city distributed a notice of preparation of the EIR to the state clearinghouse, local and regional responsible agencies, and other interested parties on March 24th, 2020 of last year for a 30-day comment period, which ended April 23rd of 2020. Various agencies and interested parties did respond to the notice of preparation pursuant to Assembly Bill 52. The city also provided consultation opportunities for the Native American tribes, and the city's notice of preparation and associated comments are included in this final environmental impact report document as Appendix A. A notice of availability of the draft environmental impact report was mailed to organizations and parties expressing interest in the project on March 31st, 2021, notifying of the general public agencies, and interested individuals and organizations that a 45-day public review period would begin on March 31st, 2021, and ending on May 17th, 2021. The notice of availability was filed with the city clerk, filed with the county clerk, published with the press enterprise, and mailed to the adjacent property owners and posted on the city's website. A notice of completion of the draft environmental impact report was circulated to the state agencies for review through the State Clearinghouse, the Office of Planning and Research on March 31st, 2021. The draft EIR for the project was prepared and circulated for review and comment by the public agencies and was circulated for public review within a 45-day period. The draft EIR and related technical studies were made available during the review, during the public review period on the city's website. We did receive comments from the flood control, Riverside County Flood Control, indicating acceptance of a master drainage plan line, which we did respond to their letter and have been working with our city engineer in addressing that. We also received a letter from the Rincon Band Louisiano Indians confirming their support for the project. We received a letter from Riverside Transit Agency indicating no comments for the project. We received a letter from the Agua Caliente and Band of Coahuila Indians confirming approval of the cultural mitigation of the project. And lastly, we received a letter from the law offices of Delano and Delano on behalf of concerned citizens of Hemet, indicating that the EIR fails to adequately analyze land use aesthetics, community character, traffic impacts, biological resources, air quality, noise, greenhouse gas emissions, water resources, cumulative impacts, and mitigation measures. The letter also indicated the EIR should be recirculated. The city prepared responses to all written comments received on the draft EIR, which raised the environmental issue. These comments and the response to comments have been incorporated into the final EIR. The final EIR was made available on July 20th, 2021. The project was determined to result in potential impacts under the topics of air quality, biological resources, cultural resources, geology and soils, transportation, and tribal. With that, mitigation measures were included in the final EIR to reduce all significant impacts to a below level of significance. Ultimately, the project has been determined to have no significant impact with incorporation of these mitigation measures. With that, should the Planning Commission wish to approve the project this evening, staff would recommend that the Planning Commission adopt the Environmental Impact Report and Mitigation Monitoring Program for Site Development Review 19-010, Conditional Use Permit 19-009, and Tentative Parcel Map number 37779, based on the CEQA findings outlined in the resolution prepared for the Environmental Impact Report. Staff also recommends that the Planning Commission approve resolution approving the project of the conditional use permit, the site development review, and the tentative parcel map. That is a separate resolution subject to the findings and conditions of approval outlined in the resolution. And third, to direct staff to file a notice of determination with the county clerk for the environmental portion. This is concluding my staff report. We're happy to answer questions. The environmental consultant, Donna Marshall with DUDEC, is here this evening as well as her team on the line to answer questions. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I know we have a lot of comments, e-comments, and interest from the public. They have some questions. So I'm just going to open up public hearing. So just in case maybe some of those questions would be the same questions we'd ask, so we don't have to ask them twice. So with that, I'll go ahead and open up the public hearing. Is the applicant of the project present or online? Would you like to come up and say anything? Please state your name and address for the record. Thank you.
Good evening, Commissioner. Thank you for hearing us this evening. We only have a couple of requests of the commission regarding the draft conditions of approval. The first one from our tenant 7-Eleven is item number 31A. Alcohol coolers located in the convenience store shall be locked between the hours of 10 p.m. to 6 a.m. And they're allowing alcohol sales until 2 a.m. So 7-Eleven is requesting that this condition be removed from the conditions. Just because it makes it difficult when they're allowing to sell alcohol, but then the coolers have to be locked until 6 a.m. So they also, their logic and their argument is that people just grab the cooler doors, they're locked, and so it becomes a maintenance issue for 7-Eleven, an ongoing. The second item is from Superstar Car Wash. It is item number 32 of the conditions. The hours of operation for the approved use shall be 7 a.m. to 7 p.m., expanded to summer hours until 9 p.m. And the car wash tenant is requesting that we modify this condition to read hours of operation from 7 a.m. to 8 p.m. year round. We understand the close proximity of the residential, of the residents, but they have new technology that is quite quiet, and then we wouldn't have to be worrying about the 9 p.m. closing during the summer. That's all we have as far as conditions. Are there any questions for us?
I guess I'd like to get some clarification. What was your name, by the way?
Connie Fox, I'm representing the developer Sage Investco. My apologies, I didn't do that.
Thank you. And your address for the record too, please.
The address is they're in Newport Beach, and I don't remember the numbers. It's on Birch Street in Newport Beach. My apologies.
Provide that afterwards. Okay. Thanks.
Okay, so Connie, my question is, you want to take it, the condition you're asking for is to take it from 7 a.m. to 7 p.m. to 7 a.m. to 8 p.m. year round.
Yes, sir.
So the 9 p.m. is out the window.
Yes.
Okay, got it. And then for the 7-Eleven, the condition is 6 a.m. to 2 a.m., but you want the coolers locked at 10 p.m.?
No, we are requesting that the coolers not have to be locked.
Oh,
The
not.
condition states that the coolers would have to be locked from 10 p.m. to 6 a.m., although the convenience store is able to sell alcohol until 2 a.m. So it's kind of a conflict there.
Okay,
Because customers are able to buy alcohol till 2 instead of 10. So they're requesting that we remove that condition.
okay. All right, I got it. Thank you.
So would they be willing to lock the coolers from 2 a.m. to 6 a.m. then?
Be open for consideration, I'm sure, but it's an ongoing maintenance situation for them when people just come in and kind of.
Other liquor stores lock their doors at that time, or do you just not sell it? What is
Actually, we've entitled quite a few 7-Elevens in this area without this condition.
Okay.
It doesn't seem to be a problem. They have surveillance cameras. Lighting is effective. I mean,
Okay.
it's really not an issue in other nearby areas.
Good. Any other questions? All right. All right. Thank you very much, Connie. All right. Are there any members of the public participating through teleconference that would like to comment on this item? And we will limit to 3 minutes per comment.
I have a request to speak form from a Shaw Rosenrager.
Good evening, sir. Please name and address for the record.
Commissioners, Chair. My name is Shaul Rosenrager, and I understand that I'm a little late in the process, as you are about and probably will approve this project. I just wanted to draw your attention to the fact that you're serving on this commission as basically the planning body, the group that kind of charts the direction of this town in this valley. And you happen to be sitting in this important place at a very critical time, because we are in the process of experiencing big changes due to climate change. It's something that none of us can personally do anything about, but there's a lot we can do in how we think about the future. What would it take to make this city livable, and during these changing times. And the changes are happening a lot faster than we expected 10 or 20 years ago. So looking at this specific project, a few things came to mind. One of them is the fact that we're adding another gas station. And gas stations are on their way to being obsolete very soon. California has a deadline for sale of internal combustion engines. I think it's 2035. But electric cars are coming to the market a lot faster by all the car makers. Some of the big car makers are already pledged to stop making internal combustion engines. So I would like to see you really rethink all these gas stations, and do we really need them? Instead, what we will need in the future is places to charge electric cars. And I think a project like this, with all the parking spaces, whether it be the car wash, the store, or especially the fast food where people stop for a few minutes, electric cars only need 15 minutes to get 70% of their charge in. And that would be a perfect place to add charging stations. Now, these things will happen naturally, because a lot of the business owners will realize that having a charging station is an attraction that may bring them more customers. But by putting these requirements in place in the first place, you're making it a lot easier and cheaper for future, even as simple as laying the conduits and having some kind of infrastructure in place that will make it easier in the future when the need is really here.
All right, thank you very much. That's
Am I out of
3
time?
minutes. Yeah, you're out of time.
Okay.
Thank you very much.
I have
for
more
coming.
ideas for you, so I'll send it to you in an
I think
email.
that is
Thank
great.
you.
Yeah, please.
I have another request to speak from Jan Casella.
Good evening. Good evening. Please state your name and address for the record.
In Casella. My address is 124 North Ramona Street in Hemet, 92543. And that is the American Legion that I'm here representing. We're on a future agenda item number 4 in 14C number 4. I've been trying to get this permit, the CUP permit, since January. I've been working on it religiously, and it seems to keep getting pushed back further and further and further.
I'm sorry, Jan. that's not for this item. That would have been public comment for items not on the agenda. So, well, so when we get to that, you can come back up. Right now, we're discussing the Stetson Center. All right, thank you. I'm sorry. Anybody else? Okay.
We have a Mike McFarland. Allowed.
Good evening. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can. Thank you. Go ahead and state your name and address for the record.
Awesome. My name is Mike McFarland. My address is 701 North Park Center Drive, Santa Ana 92705. I represent 7-Eleven. And first off, I wanted to thank staff for their support on this project and their time that they've taken on this project. I think we put together a good project here. And I also wanted to provide a little bit of clarification on condition number 31A. We are not opposed to having the cooler doors locked from 6 a.m. to 2 a.m. We will automatically do that just because that is a ABC requirement. And we abide by those rules and regulations. So those doors will be locked from 6 a.m. to 2 a.m. To answer the question about the liquor stores, I don't believe most liquor stores are open 24 hours, and 7-Eleven is requesting 24-hour service. So we have no problem with that. We would just ask that the condition be revised to show from 10 p.m. the doors being locked to 2 a.m. to be locked, 2 a.m. to 6 a.m. I also wanted to make a quick comment about EV charging stations. 7-Eleven is well aware of the electrical vehicles that are out there and the mandates by the state of California. They are heavily involved in EV charging units throughout many of their sites. They're going back actually looking and replacing and adding these EV charging systems. And I believe also that the California Building Code requires that that this site be plumbed and ready to go for charging units. So we will comply with the code requirements for that as well. And I'm here to answer any questions that you may have regarding 7-Eleven. But again, I just wanted to thank staff for their time and the developer for their time. And we think that this is a great project, and we look forward to coming into another successful site in the city of Hemet. Thank you very much.
Great. Thank you, Mike.
We have a Maria Cassian.
Good evening, Maria. Can you hear us?
Maria Cassian, can you hear us? Are you on the line?
Hello?
There you are.
Okay. I hear an echo and I don't know which one. Okay. Is that better? Yeah.
Hold on just one sec.
If you have your live stream on, can you please mute so there's not an echo?
Okay, can you hear me now?
Yes, we can. All right, go ahead and start with your name and address for the record, please.
Maria Cassian?
Your live stream, did you mute your live stream?
All right, I think this will be better. No, it's not working.
Everyone
Okay,
needs to
no,
mute
that
their live stream.
She has two audio sources open at the same time.
no.
Chair, if we could come back to her until she corrects her audio issue.
All right, if you could maybe take a look and see if you have other audio sources going, and we'll come back to you.
She is asking me to read her comment. She did
Oh,
receive it.
okay.
She submitted online. And with that, I'll proceed with the rest of the e-comments I have.
All right, thank you.
E-comment from Maria Cassian reads, I oppose the project. This will cause additional traffic and congestion in that corner, more crime and panhandling. I am not certain if this is a duplicate request. I did not receive a confirmation the first time. Thank you in advance.
All right, thank you, Maria.
I have an e-comment from Everett Delano. Please see attached letter which was submitted on 7/19/21. This letter was provided to the commission beforehand. E-comment from a Guadalupe reads, I oppose to this development because we already have one at this location, and I feel like another gas station, especially a low budget one like this one, will bring more homeless people to this side of town. E-comment from a Brian Aga reads, I oppose this project. The project will be the cause of more traffic and crime. E-comment from Itzel reads, I oppose to this station because we already have enough traffic as it is, and this is one of the exits to go out of town, and by making another gas station at this specific intersection will just be chaos. As a person who lives close, I completely oppose to this development. Comment from Carmen Mendoza reads, I oppose the project for the following reasons. 1, increase in traffic. 2, noise. 3, crime. E-comment from Bianca Trujillo reads, I oppose the project. We need any more homeless persons on that corner. We already have a problem as is. Comment from Jesus Castillo reads, I oppose to this development because in my personal opinion, we don't need another gas station in this corner because this area is what's left of what Hemet used to be. And by bringing people asking for money outside, because as a customer, this makes things awkward and it makes me not want to shop at such place. Also, gas stations like a 7-Eleven always have this problem. Another issue will be the noise. Since this will be right by the residential, it will bring more noise, for example, when they are receiving deliveries and while they work on this project. This will be very annoying and uncomfortable for the people who live literally only a few feet away. So why not build something more quiet, not another gas station? This is an anonymous comment reads, create more traffic. It is a main exit out of town. Anonymous comment received reads, create more traffic. It is a main exit out of town. E-comment from Omar Bryan reads, I oppose this project. Too many gas stations already in the city. This one will cause further congestion and noise. Anonymous comment reads, it is a main exit, will create even more traffic. Anonymous comment reads, it is a main exit, will create even more traffic. Anonymous comment reads, it is a main exit entrance, will create even more traffic. Anonymous comment reads, it is a main exit entrance, will create even more traffic. Comment from Zoila Garcia reads, I do not want this project. It will be more crime and homeless asking for money and noise. Anonymous comment reads, too much traffic. Anonymous comment reads, too much traffic. This comment is from Marco Gomez. Please note this was received in Spanish. I am paid to provide bilingual services, so I will go ahead and translate that. It says, I am not in favor of this project. Too much traffic and crime. Anonymous comment reads, too much traffic. Anonymous comment reads, too much traffic. Anonymous comment reads, too much traffic. Comment from Ricardo Gomez reads, I oppose to this development because as a homeowner in the community right next door, I just know this development will bring many, many issues. Why can't we have better proposals? Another gas station is not needed. Anonymous comment reads, will cause traffic. Anonymous comment reads, will cause even more traffic to the city. Comment from Beatrice reads, I oppose to this development because another gas station will bring more crime. That's one. Another issue I see is that it is right next to our homes. And this concerns me because anyone doing a beer run, for example, can just jump right into my backyard or anyone else's. And this is an issue for me as a mother of 2 young kids, because this will mean my children won't even be allowed to play in our yard because I wouldn't feel safe. Let's face this reality. Anonymous comment reads, will cause too much traffic jam. The senior homes are right next to it. Anonymous comment reads, will cause too much traffic jam. The senior homes are right next to it. Anonymous comment reads, will cause too much traffic jam. The senior homes are right next to it. Anonymous comment reads, will cause more traffic, especially if our senior homes are next to it. Anonymous comment reads, will cause more traffic, especially if our senior homes are next to it. Comment from Domingo reads, I would like for my opinion to be heard, and I want you guys to know that the reason I oppose to another gas station is because this intersection is already very congested as it is. Adding another gas station would just create more traffic jams, and I use this route for work every day, and it's a nightmare already, and I cannot imagine how bad it will be with this nonsense development. I understand we need more jobs, but let's face it, nobody wants to work right now, and by being short-staffed, I already know this place will end up looking very ghetto and dirty, just like other 7-Elevens who do not care for their image. And again, the incensement in traffic and traffic collisions will just be insane. I'm not against new business, but I am against this location for this station. That is the end of the e-comments received.
Okay. Any other, anybody want to wish to speak on this subject? Seeing none, I will close the public hearing. Thoughts, questions for staff?
Can we talk about the times and the lock? Like if no other, I guess I want to know maybe why that was a consideration. And I definitely think even if we do agree to the lock, we should look at the 2 a.m. to 6 a.m. And I am not opposed to 7 a.m. to 8 p.m., but I'd like to know your thoughts or,
Yes, with regards to the hours of operation for the car wash, staff would be in support of the request for from 7 a.m. to 8 p.m. based on the noise study that was prepared. They would be in compliance.
okay. What about the lock on the refrigerator?
With respect to the condition 21, with regards to from 6 a.m. to 2 a.m., we're not opposed to, that is a state requirement. Therefore, the ABC license will ensure that they are in compliance.
We don't have to require a lock, or we do? Because
We would not have to require a lock. They would have to comply with ABC. If ABC's requirement is that they provide the lock, then they would have to do so.
So, but that's a condition currently, so we would just take that condition out.
We would omit condition number 21.
31A,
31A?
31 or 21?
31A and 32,
They're,
right?
they're looking at condition 31, which doesn't relate to the
Oh.
time when alcohol
Oh.
is sold, but to the lock. And I think your question was, can we just change it from locking between 10 PM to 6 and change that to 2 AM to 6 AM to be consistent with the time alcohol is permitted to be sold?
Well, I would not be opposed to no lock if no other convenience store also doesn't have to have a lock.
On the same token, the applicant did say it's a requirement of their license, so it's not.
Not to sell it.
Well, and for it to be locked.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Whatever that requirement
Yes,
is.
Yes.
exactly. Whatever the requirement is.
Also wanted to mention this is a code requirement. I apologize, I misunderstood
A
the
code
the
requirement
request, but it is a code requirement.
for the lock. Okay. Then of course.
2 AM to 6 AM. Yes.
I have consulted with the planning director on perhaps some cleaner language
Great.
for this particular issue, which is when should the coolers be locked? And perhaps it should simply say the coolers shall be locked when alcohol sales are prohibited.
That's
How's that for clean?
that's why you're there.
That's pretty clear.
I appreciate that.
Chair Warren, I would just like to advise that I just received a request to speak on this item.
If you want to take it, you have to reopen the public.
Yeah. And just one. All right, we're going to go ahead and open public hearing back up.
Terry Larned. Wrong item.
Okay, thank you. All right, we'll close the public hearing. Any other comments, questions, discussion?
The only question I have is, are we able, I know the common thing they keep talking about is traffic, but that's usually in most exiting cities, you're gonna have a lot of traffic. And the only concern I have is the left on Stetson coming out of the parking lot. Is there a way that, do we have to make it left because it's so close to the intersection right there? And I know the people work at Micrometer, they work there every day, so they kind of know how to get out of there safely, but somebody just going there through a drive-through and make a left turn on Stetson could cause an accident.
Commissioner, there are two left-hand turns, I think. There's the one on the far east at the Micrometer parking lot. And then there's the one, I believe there's also a left-hand turn at the north end of the gas station convenience store.
But the one on the far end is the employee parking lot for Micrometer though, correct?
Right. So there's those two. So I think if you had a specific question for staff, it might be helpful to identify which of those
Okay,
two.
so the
parking
one
lots you're
that
most worried
you
about.
would, for the commercial side of it, that left-hand turn on the Stetson would be, to me, it's a short distance from there to the intersection for somebody to make a left turn, and that can cause a risk. But the far end parking lot where the employees are, that's far enough away for them to find it safe and clear to pull out. But that's just a concern of mine, that left-hand turn. If we just create a right, that would make traffic safer for everyone.
What's the distance from that left turn to the intersection, and how does that relate to what our requirements are?
I was just going to share that with you, Chair, if I may. The distance from the existing or proposed exit is about 230 feet to the intersection crosswalk. So they have adequate space to make that left turn. And I could also have our environmental consultant address that component, as well as our city engineer.
Sure, yeah. Yeah, I think that would be good if we could.
The consulting firm Dudek, their traffic specialist, will be on the line shortly.
Okay, great. So as soon as they're there, we'll take that.
We also have Steve Lariso, our city engineer, who can address that.
Good evening, Chair, members of the commission. This is Steve Lariso. Just wanted to get back in regards to the question about the left out and right out, the one closest westerly to the intersection. That was actually part of the traffic study, and I know Dudek will be able to address it more clearly. But the intent of that was almost a compromise of sorts, because there was no way that we were going to allow U-turns at the intersection going northbound onto on Sanderson, making a U-turn there. So having that left out, right out on the west driveway was a way that would work to accommodate the no U-turns, but we also felt it was far enough away from the intersection of Sanderson that it would work with left out, right out.
Yeah, and I think, you know, a good amount of people that would be visiting this site would be possibly traveling north on Sanderson, heading out of town. So if there was only a right out on Stetson, then that would either send that traffic to go up Kirby through more of a residential area and back around to Sanderson, or maybe to Kirby and try to do a U-turn, or do a U-turn in between this location and Kirby. You know, if you're heading north on Sanderson out of town and you have to turn right at some point, not that I've ever did a U-turn where you shouldn't, but you might.
But on Sanderson, that's a U-turn. Is that correct? On Sanderson and Stetson, you can't U-turn right there. Oh, okay. That's fine.
Because of the flow of traffic that goes to the right.
Is Dudek online?
Yes, this is Sabita Divani, transportation planner with Dudek. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can. Thank you. Please go ahead.
Yes, so we had evaluated the northbound U-turn at Sanderson and Stetson, and based on the comments received from city's traffic engineer, that was found to be a more unsafe movement compared to, you know, allowing a left in at the driveway of the Stetson roadway into the site. So that was a compromise. That was something we had deliberated on during the preparation of traffic study, and determined that a full access on Stetson Avenue made more sense for this site than allowing people to come out from the site on Sanderson and then trying to take a U-turn, because they would have had to cross like 3 lanes and then, you know, make a U-turn at Sanderson Avenue.
Right. So is that distance from the crosswalk? How what is the traffic standard?
So we evaluated queuing on westbound left, so from Stetson to Sanderson, and we determined the existing about 140 feet was inadequate, and then we recommended 175 feet. So that's adequate, and our driveway is about 230 feet from the crosswalk. So we, based on our analysis, we did not see a conflict there.
Okay. Thank you.
Sure.
I have a question, if we can stay with that subject.
Sure.
So my question is concerning the raised median on Sanderson. So if you take a look at this median right here, it looks like this median it looks like there's a left turn in here, but the median is going across there. So my question is, can we shorten this median so the left turn can happen? Or is this a mistake?
Intentionally identified as a raised medium to restrict access for southbound vehicles traveling on Sanderson Avenue to enter into the southern driveway. It is for emergency access only.
I'm not sure if those lines are traffic flow, or if those, it's kind of that background line, is that like topo, or is that, or?
That is intended to represent an emergency vehicle's pathway of travel.
Gotcha.
Okay.
Gotcha.
Gotcha.
Not you, the emergency vehicle, right?
Yes.
I have other questions once we get everybody else.
Anything else on traffic or turns or? I think, I mean, that was, I was keeping tally on the traffic, and that was the primary, I mean, what was addressed in the environmental impact report relative to traffic, I think is a really good point. Is first off, it's not necessarily, people aren't going to go here specifically to go here. They're going to go here because they're driving by here. And the concept of having, being able to gas up, get your food, get your car washed, you're actually kind of minimizing trips because you get to get it all done at the same spot. So I personally don't see a significant impact to the increase of traffic by having a gas station on this corner any more than you would already have, being that that's Sanderson Avenue and one of the main endpoints in and out of town.
And I think that's really an important point, having this very large packet of agenda with the thorough study. Appreciated all the information. And I think that we look at this site more as it's not a destination, which destination retail or destination things will bring more traffic because they're just coming to that site for that reason. If it were Nordstrom's, I'd say that, or something smaller, but something that would attract a rack, Nordstrom's rack, okay?
John
Nordstrom's rack, that's
Gifford would
good.
appreciate it.
That's right. But then that to me might increase the traffic, but I don't think somebody's going to drive from East Hemet just to go to this particular site for that. So it is just, they're capturing the traffic that's already going by, I believe, and that seems to be what I got out of a lot of the environmental impact report in this 828 page Planning Commission agenda.
I don't see, I mean, the drive-through could be a bigger threat than the gas station if it's a good drive.
Food wise,
If
yes.
it's a Chick-fil-A or an In-N-Out burger or something, create traffic. But
not, yeah,
not the
but
gas
actually everyone seems to have complained about the gas station and not about the potential drive-through restaurant.
Any, so it's kind of closed up on the traffic. Any other comments or questions for staff on traffic related? That was one of the most discussed. All right. Okay, moving on to anything else? Commissioner Hill?
Yes, I do have some other questions. So the Micrometer parking lot, that's tied to this. So the applicant is responsible for that? Is Micrometer part of this at all? Have they been notified and in full agreement?
Yes, this is a co-application for both Rancho McClelland and Micrometer. Both are responsible parties for the development. However, there are no alterations to the Micrometer facility for the purposes of the environmental.
Okay. And then is Mike McFarland still on, the 7-Eleven rep?
I'm still here.
Mr. McFarland, I do have a question for you. You started to talk about EV charging stations. Did you say that 7-Eleven is putting in an EV charging station there, or did you say that you were looking into it for the future? Can you please clarify that statement?
Sure. So 7-Eleven is currently has a electrical vehicle charging program. So they're going back. They're looking at all sites right now for putting charger stations in. This particular site, I don't have any knowledge of any proposed EV charging stations here for this site. However, the CBC code, California Building Code, requires that we, as a part of our project, plumb up charging stations so that when it becomes applicable, that those can be added to it. So in this particular site here, I know that there's parking is limited around the 7-Eleven store. So that's something that they need to review and analyze as well. But overall, 7-Eleven is aware and looking at all of their sites for this charging system program that they have right now. So at a minimum, we're required to provide the plumb work, basically the electrical and everything, and the spot for EV charging stations. But at this point in time, I'm not aware that this site is targeted for the EV charging station program. But saying that, I have some sites that I've been working with 7-Eleven here for quite some time, and they're going back and looking at all sites and the parking that's there, the access and everything, and about putting those in. So at this point in time, we're just meeting the code requirements to be plumbed and ready to go. And I have no information from 7-Eleven if this is a targeted site for their EV charging station program. And again, a lot of that has to do with the site configuration and the amount of parking that's there. I believe, I don't see the site plan up on the screen here. I apologize, but if I remember correctly, I think there's parking on the side and the front. So it is, it is somewhat limited here. So that is something that we take into consideration when we look at sites for the EV charging units. Hopefully I answered your question. Oh, here it is right here.
Yeah, there you go. That's good to know that that's happening. I didn't realize that.
Great.
Yeah, they're looking at all of their sites. I deal with all of California. And like I said, we right now, I think on our plate, we probably have 20 or 30 different sites that are candidates for this program that 7-Eleven is exploring. So in this particular site here, I think we have the parking in the front and the parking in the rear. So it's something that 7-Eleven would need to consider. Obviously, we don't want to, our business is convenience, in and out. Most of our customers are in and out within 5 minutes. So, so that's something that they consider as well. Traffic that's going to the site as well. Did I answer your question, sir?
Yes, you did. Thank you very much.
You're very welcome.
Same question while he's on the phone. How many cameras are usually installed at a 7-Eleven? Because another common concern is crime. And your location, how many cameras are they usually installed in 7-Elevens?
I believe we have 2 to 3 cameras on this, typical for 7-Eleven. And we have all the recording equipment where we save it for, I believe it's 30 or 45 days, so that if the police need to come back and look at something, they have that video recording equipment there. But I believe it's anywhere from 2 to 3. Standard is the standard package that we provide for a typical 7-Eleven. And then in some cases, the franchisees or the corporate stores will look at it, and sometimes they will add additional cameras. So for this site, I believe we have 2 or 3 cameras that are prepared for this site. And then we also, our sites are well lit as well for security. I know that's something that we discussed with the police department, and we have a good working relationship with police as well. And then the design of the building with all of the windows and the visibility to create that fishbowl effect, so that if the police are going down the street, they can easily see in and see into the store as well. So all those factors are considered in our security for a site.
Thank you so much.
You're welcome.
Do you have anything to add to those questions?
Yes, I would like to point out in the mitigation measures, it appears that there is a mitigation measure that was inadvertently omitted from the final conditions of approval relative to the EV charging station requirement. And that would be, so I would like to incorporate that into the conditions of approval. for air quality mitigation measure CMAQ-1, in which the project shall be constructed to meet the California Building Code, including Title 20 standards, Cal Green Code, Title 24, Part 11 of the California Energy Code, Title 24, Part 6 requirements. This includes conformance with the provisions of designated preferred parking spaces for low emitting, fuel efficient, and carpool van pool spaces, a clean air van pool EV for the project, as well as EV ready spaces, which would result in 4 spaces required for the project. In addition, bike parking would be required.
Okay, I was going to start writing that down, but I stopped. So, Mike, if you're still on the line, do you have any issues, or Connie, if you want to speak to that? Are there any issues to add that condition?
Well, I'll look at looking at the site plan here. We do have a EV space already called out on the on the side of 7-Eleven, and it appears that the drive-through also has the same on their parking field. And I will let Connie, who's the rep for the developer on that, answer the question for the entire site. But in regards to 7-Eleven, we do call out an EV space designation that's shown on the site plan there.
And just to clarify, I am showing that condition as condition 176 in the draft conditions of approval. So I don't believe it was inadvertently omitted. So I tried writing all that down, and then I'm like, I've seen this language before.
Gotta be a cut and paste somewhere.
176.
That's correct.
Okay, great.
Thank you.
Never mind, Mike. Never mind, Connie. Okay. Was there anything else that you wanted to add to those questions? Okay.
It's
Yeah.
one of the biggest paragraphs. Yes.
I got CM 82-1. That was it. Okay. Any other questions or comments for Steph?
I had one last.
Okay.
So there was a public comment from Beatrice about she was concerned that patrons would visit this area and then jump into backyards. So my question to staff is, don't these houses nearby have walls, and isn't this all blocked off?
You know, it's interesting you mentioned that one. That was an issue that came up the last time this project came before the commission, and staff actually had pictures of the wall, and that wall, it's a block wall that's adjacent to the residences, and it's actually taller than a standard wall. It's like a 9-foot wall or something like that. Do you by chance? I didn't see a 15 feet. Yeah. 15 feet. I thought it was like 9.
So yeah, so the walls abutting the development of the commercial site are 10 to 15 feet in height.
Oh, so you'd have to be pretty good to be able to jump that with the 12 pack.
So that doesn't seem to be a concern with that.
Correction, 12 to 15 feet in height.
Yeah, I knew it was really tall.
Okay, thank you. That concludes my question.
All right. Commissioner Beansdorfer, you look like you're getting ready to ask.
The only thing I noticed in reading this report was something that I'm not sure if it's going to be implemented in all new projects coming up, but the graffiti removal within 48 hours. That's something that was a kind of an eye opener for me. I like to see that because there's a lot of shopping centers that have graffiti that's been there for weeks, if not months. And that's another thing that's a plus with this particular project is they're worried about crime, traffic, and homeless. And, but if they keep the graffiti up, that's obviously going to keep the homeless out because they don't want graffiti and have to keep going in there and cleaning it up all the time. And I really think that's a great idea. I don't know if that is going to be implemented in all shopping centers or building developments that we have, or this particular one.
Policy. It's a city policy to try to get it off in 48, isn't it?
Yes, and generally we would add that condition to all of our commercial developments in the future.
Commissioner Limke?
I'm good.
We've addressed most all of the general public's issues regarding crime and traffic and et cetera. I'd like to ask staff if you could address the letter that we received. And I was trying to compare that to the former letter in our 128-page report. And I wasn't able to decipher it out, but could you just address the issues that they brought up?
Sure, I'll take a first crack at it since it's coming from a firm that's representing some people who are concerned with the project. The letter did come from the law firm of Delano. Delano, that's the one you're referencing, dated July 19th, 2021. As the vice chair mentioned, this is the same firm that did put in an extensive comment letter that the final EIR does have pretty meticulous responses to those concerns. I would look at this letter, and having read their previous comment letter, I see it mostly as a summary, so that you guys had something that's a little bit more digestible in front of you rather than the more extensive comment letter. From a city staff perspective, perhaps it's a result of the summary or perhaps not, but it looks mostly conclusory. So, they're making statements, that it violates the general plan. Okay, how does it violate the general plan? That's kind of missing from the letter. And again, I don't know if that's simply a result of the length. They wanted to keep it short, so they didn't really go into that level of detail. They certainly went into significant detail in their other letter that was responded to in the final EIR. They address essentially the findings that you're required to make, for the conditional use permit, for the design review, and for the map, saying that, it's contrary to essentially policies that are stated in the general plan. For example, that it does not provide transitional uses between the commercial and the single family, but does not state, how this project fails to do that. So for example, you see that we do have the landscaping along the southern edge. There's dense vegetation along that edge. There's parking along that edge. The trash enclosure isn't along the southern edge. And that's consistent with how other projects that this planning commission and the city have dealt with, where you have that interface between, you inevitably are always going to have it. Like at some point, the commercial has to end and the residential has to begin. And that's where, and so we've just heard that we have a 12 to 15 foot block wall. It's the largest wall I've heard of, in addition to all the vegetation. So, they say something like you don't have that transition, but they don't explain how. And then you've heard from staff, these are the things that we have to manage that transition. So I look at it as generally conclusory. The other things that they put in here are that the EIR is inadequate. And I think that they're essentially referencing their previous letter where they're stating the reasons for that. And then they also say that notice was inadequate, saying that they did not receive notice. I don't know how that's true, considering they got a letter addressing the hearing, and they don't cite to any specific statute where they were required to get some other form of notice than that which they already received. So I would say, in my opinion, the concerns have been addressed in the final EIR. Whether or not that's sufficient for the planning commission, that's up to you. You're the ones who certify the EIR. But I think this is mostly a summary letter. That's how I would read it.
As when I read through and I again addressed, I was reading through and I saw their letter, went through what was addressed in their letter, and then I was trying to just go back and double check were these things addressed, and I appreciate that. I appreciate that you addressed that. It felt like they were, but I appreciate that. Okay.
I was just going to say that not only do I felt that staff addressed the concerns in the original comment letter, personally, I feel like they went above and beyond to be very meticulous in addressing the concerns in the comment letter. After all, we are talking about an EIR for a gas station, which is a significant amount of work and legal review for a project of this size. That's essentially an infill development.
Generally, most gas stations are approved with mitigative negative declarations.
That is what I would expect to see on a project of this scope and size, just from my experience. I would expect to have seen either a negative declaration or mitigated negative deck. I think maybe the project size is a little too big for the infill categorical exemption, but that's what I would have expected to see. Yes.
Anything else? Okay. Yeah, and you know, one of the things that just kind of like stuck out to me, and it's really silly in a way, but it talked about the proximity of the convenience store. That was one of the complaints: the proximity of the convenience store to existing residential development. And so I took that site plan and I did an overlay and did a measurement, and you know, it's about 195 feet from the southern wall of the 7-Eleven, the proposed 7-Eleven, to the perimeter of the gas station or of the residential of the Willow Walk development. And you go across the street and it's about 190 feet to the outer edge of the gas station that's already existing to the perimeter wall. So it seems like a lot of the complaints or the concerns are existing conditions anyway. So, and I agree that I mean, I unfortunately have had the opportunity to read through a lot of EIRs with my other job, and this was I've worked with Dudek actually in my other, but yeah, this certainly seems to have very comprehensively addressed the concerns and have shown that there are no significant impacts, and in fact I think it's more of a benefit to our community than a detriment to our community. It's my own personal view. So anything else from staff, anything that you want to add?
One more question,
Sure.
kind of a silly question, but going back to Commissioner Hill's question, reference to the lady with the wall. The tree and the greenery, I know these look like all shrubs, bushes that are coming up. It's really hard to read the footage on how tall these trees get, but are any of these trees going to surpass that wall to where, I know like the old Kmart building, the Chinese Laundry, there was a homeless guy living in the trees there for a while and they had to cut the tree down. But I don't know if are those tall trees, those two that are against the wall.
Chair, if I may.
Please.
Based on the Google Street View, they are pine trees that go above and beyond the wall. Looks to me like it's probably 30 to 40 feet tall.
Interesting then, okay.
We don't. I've also learned that you don't want to take down a tree that usually causes a problem. There's usually mitigation measures with trees, with tree removals. Yeah. Okay. Well, if there's nothing more, would someone like to make a motion on this?
I move that the Planning Commission adopt Planning Commission resolution approving environmental impact report and mitigation monitoring and reporting program for the site development review 19-010, the conditional use permit 19-009, and tentative parcel map number 37779, map 19-003, based upon the CEQA findings outlined therein, and Planning Commission approve site development review 19-010, conditional use permit 19-009, and tentative parcel map 37779, map number 19-003, subject to the finding and conditions of approval.
Including the changes
And
to 31A.
yes, and I'd like to include the changes of the requirement for the car wash to be year-round hours of 7 a.m. to 8 p.m. And then item number 31A, that the coolers shall be locked during the requirements of the, however you
When
said
when alcohol sales are prohibited.
alcohol sales are prohibited. And then the other one that she mentioned, we found it in item number 176, so we don't need to address that. And then direct staff to file the notice of determination with the county clerk.
I'll second.
Motion passes 5-0. Thank you, Connie, and thank you everyone for being online. All right, moving on to item 13 for Sb2 Planning Grant work study. Odds and VMT.
Chair, members of the commission, while David Leonard, who's our consultant, is being prepared, I just wanted to let you know that this is a work study, and this is where you can make comments, address concerns, or make any suggestions at this point. You do not need to take any action on this item. It is a work study item.
Items individually, and now you can probably hear me. The city was awarded a Sb2 Planning Grant in February 13th of 2020, and they then selected a consultant who was me to proceed to manage the program. The program consists of 5 distinct projects. The first one is an objective design and development standards. That we'll get into that very quickly. That's kind of the cornerstone to all of this. The second is a North Hemet zone change that is follows the creative or the objective design standards. Then there's a downtown TOD housing project. Transportation oriented development is what TOD stands for. An electronic plan review component and general plan amendments. Up above the table, you see a paragraph. The key words in that paragraph are the plans that streamline housing approvals and accelerate housing production. That's the onus on us by the state of California to streamline housing approvals and accelerate housing production. And that's going to be the theme you see throughout the night. And you're going to hear a lot of state legislation because that is asserting itself more and more into the planning criteria. Let me see if I can figure out how to slide this down. Starting with the objective design and development standards, the city retained the services of MIG Consulting to prepare objective design and development standards. And the first thing we needed to learn were what are objective design and development standards. And they proceeded to compile draft standards and establish an administrative review of projects. That's the key component. It creates an administrative ministerial review of projects that are in the objective design overlay zone, meaning that they go through a staff review and then they go to building permit. There would be no public hearings. The objective standards were in response to California Housing Crisis Act of 2019 as codified in SB 330 and the Housing Accountability Act SB 35. It bans the rejection of housing proposals based on subjective grounds. And going through the City of Hemet's multiple family housing element, I can point out a few of those statements that read such as detrimental to the public health, safety, and welfare. You could use that, but you have to be very specific on what grounds you're using it. There's also statements like to the greatest extent possible, that's subjective. Incompatible with community character, that's subjective. So the ordinance that we have drafted has to be very specific on the reasons why an action is being taken. It also obligates the city to allow concessions from the specific development standards as long as it includes that affordable housing component, and that's what these projects would be doing. We have not formulated a implementation plan yet because we don't have an ordinance yet. But we, as part of that process, we would anticipate that the very first initial action would be to create a concessions agreement with the applicant to negotiate those items, which would be deviations that would be allowed pursuant to a development plan. This could relate to setbacks. It could relate to density. Now, and density is not necessarily the number of dwelling units, but it also could relate to the unit size. And then there would be other factors that could come into play, number of parking spaces and so forth. But we would have to have good, reasonable grounds for making those, taking those actions. After we drafted the guidelines, we then conducted a community meeting on December 3rd, 2020. You know, that's right in the heart of the COVID period. So what we did was conducted the meeting via Zoom, and we had 10 participants. They reflected a general cross-section of the county of business, lay people, development industry, to get some input on that. And we then engaged stakeholders following that. One particular stakeholder is Pond Communities, who you'll be hearing about further through this presentation, and who's represented here tonight, who are actually proceeding with a development plan pending the outcome of this proposal. We then, based on all of that input that we received, we then finalized the draft standards. We are bringing an overview to you tonight. We're taking the objective design standards to develop the review committee on August the 5th, and you may actually see a public hearing on those standards on the second hearing of August or sometime in September at one of your hearings then. And that is based on the environmental requirements for the project. At this point, I would like to see if Laura Stetson is on the line and see if she has anything to add. Laura is with MIG Consulting and might want to add some points from her work in actually drafting the ordinance.
David, I am on the line. Thank you very much. Mr. Chair and members of the commission, Dave covered things pretty well, but I think the critical thing to point out with regard to these objective design and development standards, to reiterate, is this is a process and a set of standards that would remove planning commission jurisdiction, if you will, or responsibility for multifamily project review. The standards would very clearly build on things like setbacks and building heights to address things that are design in nature, building massing, building articulation, roof treatments, where you put parking, where you put trash enclosures, how walls are treated. All of these types of things would be included in your zoning code and would be additional criteria that your staff would use to review development projects that come in to ensure that they conform with the standards. Now, if there is a developer who chooses not to pursue the standards, they need to do something that's outside of them. That's something that would require that a project come before Planning Commission. But if something conforms with the standards, it would be what's called a ministerial approval and move forward in that manner. This is something that the state has put in place to encourage and facilitate the rapid approval of multifamily housing and mixed-use projects that include a certain percentage of residential components, just to help housing production in the state. With that, I'll turn it back to David and Mr. Kang to see if there are any other questions.
I understand we have 4 more projects to walk through. I do want to invite any quick questions the commission has.
Sure, just real quick. Once these standards are in place and they go through a process to be reviewed and accepted and adopted by ordinance, what's the process, if any, to update those standards in the future?
It would be through any form of an ordinance amendment. And there may be changes that we've written them in such a way where there could be changes that need to type of plan submitted, like the types of details, and maybe we can handle that through the application form and not through a full ordinance amendment. So we want to keep it fluid in the process so we can react to changes, because this is somewhat of untested waters. The other aspect of this is there probably would be a requirement for more plans than you would typically see. Not so much of beyond, the site plan, the grading plan, the landscaping plan, the lighting plan, but more in the form of details, so we can get an understanding of, we want to make sure that what we're acting on is compliant with the requirements that, as we understand them, based on the concessions agreement, and a predictable outcome. We want to know what we're approving. So those are the two key elements that we want coming out of this. Okay, the next, assuming then that an ordinance is adopted creating the objective design and development standards, and by the way, that would be county or citywide, but applicants would have to apply for it on individual properties. Assuming that's the case, then we would move forward with the North Emmett change of zone. And we have specific properties in mind that would be included within the North City zone change. These would be on the west side of State Street and divided by Menlo Avenue. These are properties primarily owned by the Housing Authority of Riverside County, which operates their facility on one of the properties. And then there would also be a property that's located on the north side of Devonshire that is predominantly vacant except for a city facility belonging to the police department. That would become the TOD site. And the key component of that is a mobility hub that we would work in partnership with RTA to build. And then around that site would be high density housing, as you see in many communities where they interact with each other.
Where are you talking about? Is that across, are we talking about across from the Simpson Center?
That's what we're almost there.
Area. No, that's Devonshire.
That's Devonshire.
This is North City, the North Emmett zone change of properties primarily owned by the Housing Authority. And you can see salmon colored side on the north is their facility. And we have properties on the north side of Menlo, south side of Menlo, and you can see the parcels they don't own that don't have a color to them. And then this is the TOD site, and
TOD stands for
Transportation Oriented Development. You see in the what is defined as parcel 8 is vacant, but just below that is the AMR ambulance facility. So that's an existing landmark you would notice on the street today. That's not included in the project, but that's at the project site adjacent to it. And then the white building in the middle, that's the police facility. And one of the elements of this is we're working on trying to relocate that. So let me go back to, now that we've got a visual reference to it, let me describe the properties themselves.
I'm sorry, can you tell me again? And it's because I was here when we bought that for the police department. And it has been very critical for a facility for them. So you're saying you're looking at trying to relocate that? Why?
Because that is right in the middle of where the development needs to occur. And it could even be relocated to the frontage of one of the streets, to the north or to the east.
So are you talking about right here or right here?
That facility, the second.
That was the old Coors building. Okay. So I see what you mean. I thought you meant this because we
no,
that too. But that's what I was talking about. Why would that have to be moved?
No, that's not a part of being needed relocated. That's correct. So let me describe the aspects of each of these. The Housing Authority filed a specific plan over the properties that were identified as under their ownership in 2012 for 500 dwelling units and 135,000 square feet of commercial and office space. That proposal was withdrawn because it was funded through redevelopment monies. When redevelopment was outlawed, they're with the project. Palm Communities is acquired land from the RCHA to build workforce housing. And let's go back to this exhibit. And if you look at the very top, you'll see a residential development that is actually fronts onto Fruitvale. That is the development that Palm Communities has already done and is operating. And they're proposing to then just move south and continue developing that parcel through the acquisition they've just recently made with the Housing Authority.
Talking about here, sorry. Oh, I lost my, sorry.
Everything north of Menlo that's in the color.
North of Menlo. So you're talking about all of this property here? That's correct. To be developed like this one has already been developed.
Like the one to the north.
Right there.
For workforce housing, that's correct. We've also secured a water supply assessment from EMWD, who has agreed to provide water to the site. And since I'm on this, I'll just stay with it. On the south side of Menlo, that's a total different world. The Riverside County Housing Authority also includes that. There are property owners that are not part of the Housing Authority. Those are the ones that aren't in any particular color. Staff will conduct an outreach to them to see if they want to voluntarily include their properties within this, but we won't force it. But we would like to get as many properties as possible to participate. That's correct, right up there at the corner. There is no developer commitment at this time, and it lies within the Hemet Water District, Lake Hemet Water District. So that's the zone change areas that we would be coming back to once the other ordinance is adopted, creating the objective design standards. Now let me go to the next project, which is the TOD facility itself. There's a lot of words on this page because it's a complicated transaction. The city is negotiating a memorandum of understanding with RTA for the co-development of this property. RTA is willing and has set aside $6 million for the design, permit, and construction of a mobility hub facility as envisioned in the Hemet Mobility Hub conceptual plan that was approved by the city council. And Commissioner Van Arsdale, this may look rather familiar to you. That's the mobility hub on the south end of it. And now you get to see in the lavender color how the residential development relates to the police facility and how the police facility is in the middle of the future development. Again, the AMR facility would remain. However, you may have seen an aerial photo that showed a structure on the west side of the former railroad tracks to go through there. That was an old agricultural warehouse that has been removed. That's now vacant property. But again, you get the layout of the mobility hub, and the plan is to proceed and carry on with the program that was approved conceptually in the past. The city would also pursue future development of adjoining housing and possible support commercial. We want to be careful of that. When we think of commercial with this project, we want to think of really support commercial to serve the residents that are there. We don't want to create a competition with commercial that's in the vicinity, because we're trying to stimulate that and make it thrive. The city's responsibilities would be to deliver the site for development, okay, the relocation of the police facility. We have already conducted a phase 1 site assessment of that building and know the remediation requirements that would be required. And we have conducted an appraisal of the site, and we are getting ready to launch a market study. The appraisal and the market study are components that are required under the grant, because this program goes all the way to going to an RFP to the development community to select a developer to build the mobility hub. Of course, the police facility would be demolished, assuming relocation. The city would also be the lead agency for all environmental permitting and process all permit applications. There are some joint responsibilities between the two parties. One is to conduct an RFP, like I just said, with a development partner to seek and secure additional grant funding opportunities for the housing component and to conduct public outreach with project design and function. At this point, we may have Kristen Warsinski, the Director of Planning for the RTA, on the line. And if so, maybe she would like to add any additional comments. In fact, I think I can even see her.
Everybody hear me okay?
We can hear you, Kristen.
Okay, thank you very much. Good evening, commissioners. My name is Kristen Warsinski. I'm the Director of Planning for RTA. And what David has described is basically where we're at with the project. We are currently negotiating the MOU. I did want to clarify in this picture that is on the screen, the sort of lavender areas that you see that that city staff has identified for housing. When we did our study, we and you can see it, I believe, on the legend if you look closely, but it just says potential or future private development. We didn't get as far as identifying what exactly was going to go on these different parcels, and I just wanted to be clear about that because we did have a lot of community meetings. We spent a lot of time with the community, and that wasn't what we had said. Not to say that that's not going to work or that we're not in support of whatever the city and the city council and staff thinks is best use for the area. It's just that's not what we had identified in these purple areas. We were looking more at commercial and retail. We had done a market analysis, but I know that there's a new market analysis coming that David is working on, and we're anxious to see what the results of that is. We do have, as you mentioned, $6 million set aside for the architectural, engineering, and design work and for construction for this facility. And we are looking forward to moving this project forward and being a good partner however we can. Thank you.
Thank you.
What about this parcel right here?
That's not included in the project, and I don't have any background on that.
So we're showing this right now as residential, but that's not necessarily what it's going to end up as, or is the residential what the city is
Well,
wanting to?
We have assigned 400 dwelling units to this under the TOD. Now, I should also say that the housing authority parcels combined would be 300 units. So we're looking at a maximum 700 unit project.
Mixed use, right?
No, residential, but there may be a small commercial component within the residential area. Let's say.
But where's the high density going?
That's the lavender areas you see on the screen, and also the housing authority parcels.
Say housing authority, you're talking about across the street on
Yes,
State
or
Street.
North Emmett.
In your study of all this, did you take a look at the stock farm, which is between Oakland and Devonshire west of State? Had you taken a look at that former specific plan?
I can address that. We have been working with the owners of the stock farm, but it's not part of this development, but they are interested in moving that project forward. So we have been in discussion of that project.
That project had a specific plan. I thought it was a really good specific plan in the past. It had a lot of live work components to it. It had commercial component along State Street, but it had it was very thoughtful, and it did preserve a big part of history. There was a preservation component regarding the buildings themselves, but it was very thoughtful in its process. It's actually owned by a former council member, mayor of the city of Hemet. It's owned by his father and in the family. So he's always been a real proponent of live work things. I told him his time has finally come.
We are not trying to compete with that, but what drives both projects is the city of Hemet is way behind on meeting the housing requirements set by the Housing and Community Development by the state. And so what we're trying to do is get the numbers in league with what the expectation is of the state, of the city.
I think that this, I think that these concepts, especially the transportation hub, the live work kind of components, I think it complements that. And if there was any action on this property, which I know they've been looking to move forward one way or another, either sell or develop, it could be a real synergy going on in the whole total area. Because that's 36 acres.
What you're describing is a very distinctive market niche between the two projects that are appealing to different types of populations. And they should be able to work very well together. That would be our expectation.
What are the types of transportation in and out of this transportation hub?
At this point, obviously the lead is buses, and it'd be a regional bus facility. Kristen, can you elaborate on that? You have more background on this than I do. Is there for instance, is there a park and ride facility?
Sure. So we did not plan for a whole lot of parking. We planned for all of our buses to go there. Right now, all of our buses kind of lay over at the Hemet Mall. And if you've seen them, we've kind of outgrown that area. So this was meant to get them off the street and to have a layover facility, a transfer facility for passengers. We have routes that go to South County, to Temecula. We have routes that go to Riverside, up to the Pass area and into Moreno Valley. So all of those routes would meet at this location. We are also exploring microtransit for your area. And so the microtransit buses would also connect people to the regional routes at this location.
We're creating a very constant, and I understand we're behind what we need to be per the state in regards to high density, but we'll be creating a very large concentration of residents that we're expecting will not have vehicles and will be dependent on the buses to get where they need to go. And then also kind of a central location where anyone else in the city that needs to use public transportation would have to use that. I'm sorry, you said micro? I forget the term. I'm sorry, go ahead.
I apologize. Our buses would still travel throughout Hemet and San Jacinto, throughout the cities. They wouldn't you wouldn't have to come to this location to get on a bus. There is a nexus between that type of housing and transit, and sometimes even transit passes purchased to encourage ridership. I've seen that with some grants before, but generally speaking, you wouldn't have to travel to this facility in order to get on RTA. You could get on RTA wherever you would want to. This would be more of the facility. You would ride a bus to this facility and then transfer to a different bus to complete your trip. More of a transfer hub.
Thank you. And then there was discussion a while back, the Metrolink system. Is that what's the status of that, and how does that tie into this?
So
Go ahead, Kristen.
Metrolink services would be under RCTC, Riverside County Transportation Commission. I know that they did a rail study, and that this alignment was one of the alignments that they had identified for future rail. And that was part of the reason why this location was chosen by the city for a transit-oriented district, was because it would be a good place to put the buses and the rail together. And there is already the rail spur running right along this. So if the rail came in, it would be a perfect location. Sometimes also having buses running in this area prior to trains sometimes drives up the need for Metrolink, and also helps with grants because you already have passengers riding. So that is another bonus to having those right next to each other.
Thank you.
One thing too, I'd like to point out, just to the east of this, you've got the hospital, very, very close. And there's a lot of energy going into expanding some really great projects at the hospital, including education and a number of other things. So within a block and a half there, and I don't know if you've gotten that information, but I'd love to talk to you about it. There's a whole lot of potential of not just medical employees as it relates to, from doctors all the way around, but also education component. And I think that that is pretty exciting for this core downtown area.
That's information we should share with the market consultant before they launch their study so that we can see those relationships and have them address it. I also, in a former life, was a contract planner to San Jacinto. Don't blame me for that. But we worked on the same thing up there for the mobility hub in San Jacinto, same alignment of the rail. The reality is that's the end of the line, and it would have to be a totally subsidized operation because it's maybe the next generation or the generation after that that would have a population base enough to support light rail, but the right of way would be reserved for that purpose under this proposal. Anything else on TOD before I move to the next project? Sometimes projects take a life of their own, and electronic plan processing was one of those. The budget we set aside for that, or that was set aside through the grant, was $39,500. So we did a bid process, and all of the proposals came back in excess of $250,000. So we took a step back, did some consultations, and the way we approached it was a ending alone with lots of hardware and software. That's what drove up the cost. And HP has been working in consultation with some other vendors that focus on the software side. So the plan at this point is to apply the funds that we have set aside for this towards an additional outlay from City Council. Council, I believe, is considering that, and that will be carried out as a separate process. A key thing with the City of Hemet is processing is all done with paper plans. And the push is now dealing with that electronically, so you don't have the expense and the storage and everything that comes with it, and that everything would then be done electronically and faster, moving projects expedited through the system, which is an objective of the grant.
This is an area that I know with EMWD, we've been working on this for quite some time. And one recommendation that I would make to the city staff is to not reinvent the wheel. There's a lot of other agencies that are going down this road. I know for us, one of the things we really focused on was CAD standards. All these engineers and architects are developing these plans that you're looking at in paper, but there's a base file already established. And so when you start establishing CAD standards, you want to be consistent with other land use agencies, with other water purveyors, so that the developer is not having to do multiple versions of the same file. So I know the Riverside County has CAD standards in place. We're working with Valleywide with CAD standards. We've established our CAD standards as well. So electronic submittal via CAD standards, it requires a plan review and check of the CAD layering itself and naming. But if you can use what other agencies are doing, that might first off make it more streamlined because the developers are using the same files, and secondly reduce the amount of effort we have to do. I know a lot of those agencies would be very happy to share.
Sure, if I could add to that. We have started to accept electronic plan checks, but a lot of our mom and pops or the regular homeowners are still bringing in paper format. So we're trying to assist them in how we can incorporate electronic plan submittals for those folks as well as the big developers, because we know big developers can do that and they can bring in CAD standards and all of those things. But we're trying to provide a service to all aspects and all sectors for electronic plan submittals.
I can see that being a challenge. we do a lot of that work ourselves based on whatever we get. So there's a labor component when you get those mom and pops that draw out what they want, and we do it. So in case I can understand $39,000 not being enough.
Anything else on electronic plan before we go to project 5? In order to streamline the process, we have to be legally compliant. And the state, once again, adopted guidelines requiring changes in traffic studies under SB 743, which changed the method of, or the metric of reviewing traffic from a level of service. It's not really changing, it's adding to it a vehicle miles of travel. That's the VMT component. Quite honestly, VMT proposals or analysis is expensive and onerous, and it takes quite a while to do. The RCTC, I may have the wrong acronym, I think it's RCTC, has I'll be correct in a moment, has the template and the baseline data for agents, cities to tie into for preparation, but they are very involved. And it's a huge modeling program. In the meantime, you still need to measure traffic from a level of service to define general plan consistency, because that's what the general plan is based on. However, the general plan also has to be updated to acknowledge the existence of the VMT. One of the things the state law allows us to do is create screening criteria. And so that's what we've been working with Fair and Pierce, who's prepared the guidelines for us. And what we have done is to really orient the requirement for VMTs away from an urban core and towards the outskirts of the city, where there would be potentially greater impacts to the transportation system because they have a longer way to travel. And by the way, the VMT is rather a built-in bias to penalize distance traveled. We'll get to I'm sure the state will get to the miles, tax per mile point at some time in the future, but we're not there yet, thankfully. We have developed screening criteria that's rather broad to allow a number of projects to proceed without having to do VMT while still doing the LOS analysis, the types of analysis you're most familiar with. Those are going to be in the guidelines that we bring forward to you in a general plan. A little tongue twisted here, through a general plan amendment, which you can see the types of projects that we're proposing to be screened. Having compiled guidelines, they've been vetted with the city staff, the engineering department, the city's transportation engineer, and a GPA will be initiated to the update of the general plan. And we are hopeful that the public hearing process on that will begin this fall. At this point, let's see if Paul Herman is still on the line. He's with Fair and Pierce, and he drafted the guidelines. Paul, are you there?
I am here. You guys hear me?
And is there anything you'd like to add to?
I think you did a good job there, Dave. Basically, SB 743 is something that came down from the state legislature. It's not something we can control. It's something that we need to choose how we incorporate it into the traffic impact study guidelines and thresholds of significance related to CEQA. It basically says you can't use level of service or congestion to designate impacts in CEQA anymore. But as you know, we've still incorporated that as part of a general plan policy. So that's still consistent. It just level of service requirements won't be enforced through CEQA anymore. Now traffic impacts will be designated through VMT studies. And we based all of our findings on the WRCOG study that provided a lot of input for all of its agencies. I think you might have been referring to RIVTAM earlier, Dave. Is that right? When you're trying to think of the...
You corrected it, WRCOG.
Oh, WRCOG. And then, yeah, and then there's the traffic models that are available in order to provide the traffic analysis. And so I think you did. Yeah, I think that's the basic summary. I'm available for much more technical questions if needed.
Thank you. You may recall the Rancho Diamante project that came before you a few months ago. That project came to hearing after the SB 743 requirements in place. What we did have was a VMT screening letter for that project before we had guidelines, but we used the WRCOG, thank you for that, platform in order for the traffic consultant to prepare that review in order to maintain compliance. But that's the one instance that it's been used so far in the city. Is anything else on VMT before we move to housing element? Okay. Were basically 3 general plan amendments that were identified through the grant. I've mentioned one of them, the circulation element general plan. The next one is the housing element. That has already begun on a separate track. Kimberly Horn has been retained to prepare that update, and it includes the number of units that we're proposing within this area. I don't know what is this coming to hearing this fall, HP?
Yes, it'll be presented to Planning Commission and then on to City Council.
So that's going to be up here very soon as well. There was one other one other amendment identified in the grant, but I think state law has preempted that, at least in our discussions among staff. There was to be a specific plan amendment to the downtown specific plan wherein the TOD site lies. In further review of changes in law, SB 35 being the key one, it looks like any deviations from the downtown plan would be addressed through the concessions agreement on any development application. The downtown plan allows for 30 units to the acre on the TOD site with a bonus of 10 units per acre if it's affordable housing, so for a total of 45. Just so happens that the SB2 grant proposal is at 35 units per acre. So it's within that range and it's oriented towards workforce or affordable housing anyway. But again, there would be likely exceptions through setbacks and through the unit size. And those would be addressed through a concessions agreement, and we would not do the specific plan amendment. That's how we're thinking this works at this time. We're gravitating and migrating our way through changes in state law that, happen daily. The next element of the plan is the environmental review. And we've retained CAS Consulting to prepare a scope of the environmental documents required. When I mean scope, I mean those that require an M&D or those that can be exempted from CEQA. And we've held a kickoff meeting recently on July the 1st, and we are having them work on a technical memorandum right now to address what can be exempted and what needs to go through a full CEQA process. And that is expected within the next couple of weeks. So that's just getting started, but that is a key element. We do expect that the zone change for North Hemet will, at the minimum, require a environmental assessment and possibly the GPA for the circulation element. Even though it's not necessarily a project, it's part of a project. So that's what we're having to work through with the staff right now. So those are the 5 projects, but I want to just touch on administration. A maximum 5% of the contract is allowed for administration. So HP and I do a weekly status meeting, do a little report on the hot spots we need to work on each week. We do invoice management and overall budget management, and we secure reimbursements from the state. As of now, we have been the city of, and this is primarily something of interest to the council, but I thought I'd share it with you. All work performed on this grant through 2020 has been reimbursed by the state, and all work performed from January 1st to July 30th has been billed to the state, and that invoice is pending. And with we can't bill the state unless we have expended 15% of the grant, which is $46,000. So once we spend $46,000, we can go after our reimbursement. So for a sequence of events, the first thing you would see is the zoning text amendment, creating the objective design and development standards, and hopefully that'll be in late August, but quite possibly September. Then the zone change that actually applies that overlay to specific parcels, the North Hemet and the TOD site. Then the general plan amendment for the housing element update, and the general plan amendment to the circulation element. And at that point, there is one other person in the audience who I think you should hear from, and that's Mitch Slagerman of Palm Communities, who is the developer working with the Housing Authority. As I mentioned, they've already established a presence at the north end of the project. And with that, that would conclude my report. You'd be hearing from me many times again.
Please.
Good evening, Mr. Chairman and members of the commission. My name is Mitch Slagerman. I'm with Palm Communities. We're located at 100 Pacifica Suite 203 in Irvine. We are, as Mr. Leonard indicated, owners of the property north of Menlo on State Street. So we own all the property except for the county in that little corner right on there. And I will tell you that we tried to acquire that property, but it's a little spendy for the economics of our project. It would have been a great addition and would have cleaned up that whole corner once we get an opportunity to develop. We're pretty excited to be involved here at the City of Hemet. This would be our second project. As Mr. Leonard indicated, we own Hemet Vistas, which is off of Fruitvale. It's 146 units, and we've been invested in your community for well over 20 years now. So we're here, and we want to continue to be here and expand our investment. We've been very appreciative of Mr. Kang and Mr. Leonard's allowing us to kind of participate very early on in the process. We've given some input. I've had numerous conversations with Mr. Leonard and with Mr. Kang over the last year and a half or so. And we're very appreciative as a company to be involved so early, to be allowed to give our input. There are issues related to the type of housing that we build. Because of the funding sources, we get most of our funding from state and governmental, federal and local governmental sources that have certain conditions. Mainly, we can only charge so much rent because the housing is affordable. And so we're limited in terms of the types of things that we might be able to do, but I think we produce a very nice product. And what we're planning to do at State Menlo is going to look much nicer than what we already have at Fruitvale and State. And I think management is a critical element of that, and I think we do a good job of that. We have looked at the draft ordinance and have provided comments already to Mr. Leonard. I think that's an ongoing process for us. We've had a few conversations. I think we would like to have a few more to kind of flesh out what some of the ideas that your consultant has come up with. But we're very excited to be part of this process. And we're looking forward to getting started. We've owned the property now since the end of September of last year. And after going through an acquisition process from the county. And so we're eager to begin the design and entitlement process and actually get started on funding and building this and having a new amenity for your community. So I appreciate the opportunity to introduce myself and our company. Just a little bit about the company. We're 40 years old. Have about 2,000 units in our portfolio. We call ourselves a boutique developer. There are some developers that have 8,000, 10,000 units, but we like to focus on doing good quality work for generations. We tend to always hold our properties long term. It's a family-owned company. And so most of our properties and most of our portfolio are in the Inland Empire and more specifically in Riverside County. We've partnered with the county on numerous projects over the last 20 years, and this property is just a continuation of that partnership. So we're looking forward to continuing to work with the city and with all of you. Thank you.
Great, thank you. Two quick questions. Sure. You said that this is going to be nicer than what's existing. How is the product that you're proposing going to be different than what you have existing?
I like the architecture that we're planning for this site. The product that is at Fruitville is a product that's about 20 years old in design, and we did a number of those in different communities. There our property over in San Jacinto is very similar looking. We have some in Moreno Valley that look the same way. I actually used to work for the city of Moreno Valley years ago, and used to negotiate with Palm Communities for projects. And so when they wanted to do another project, another part of town, another phase project, I said, well, okay, now you have to up your game and update the architecture. So we are updating this architecture, or this is what I'm calling a 2.0 version of our architecture. So it's something that can be replicable, because in our industry, we have to be very cost conscious, again, because of the sources that we're getting our funding from, and it's very competitive. So we have to be very cost conscious moving forward. So we put on different elevations, but typically it's what we're doing now is a 3-story stacked project. So units tend to be stacked on top. So a 3-bedroom unit on the first floor would be the same on the second and on the third, and the 2 bedrooms and the 1 bedrooms would all typically, everything changes a little bit based on the site, the site constraints, but we're trying to do that. But with some articulation and using some materials where we can to brighten them up. I just think we're putting together a pretty nice product. We're submitting something similar right now in the city of Wildomar, and we're awaiting a hearing date to see where we end up with that.
And then finally, so that your existing community there has been there for quite a while, and frankly, it's very well taken care of, very clean. It looks it's very nice, especially in that area. How do you do it? What's different about what you do that keeps it?
So our owner, Dan Horn, is a 2nd-generation affordable housing developer. And his dad taught him, he said he prefers to invest in a small amount of communities. There are developers who will just go all over California, and we are, in a number of communities throughout California as well. But as I said, most of the portfolios here in Riverside County, and we have built some long-term relationships with people. And you can't do that if you're building and maintaining your buildings in a substandard condition. So when we want to come into a community and say, hey, we'd like to invest again, and if your comment had been opposite of what you had said, that would make it difficult for us to be effectively invest in here, because you might have an impression of our company that, hey, they don't really do a good job. Maybe they're kind of, second class or worse. So it's plus he's just got a lot of pride in his ownership, and he wants the properties to look good. But it's very important for our owner and our company mentality is that we maintain the projects, because usually there's some sort of local investment, whether it's the city or the county, and we're working with people and we want them to look good, they can show their electorate that they've made a good investment and of taxpayers' dollars as well. So it's real important, and it just makes good business sense to maintain your properties over time. We have to be very efficient because we can't just raise rents because we're restricted by state law. We cannot just go, okay, well, we'll raise the rents to, cover something.
What's your rents range here in Hemet? That, like, I don't have to give me exact, but what is the range of rents in that complex?
In that complex is probably between, say, those are larger bedrooms. It's all 3 and 4, but 2s, 3s, and 4s. So it's probably ranging from like the high 400s to maybe $1,000 a month. It depends on the income, and incomes range from 30% of the AMI, the area median income, to 60% of the area median income. Median income for Riverside County, I think, is high 70s, low 80s for a family of 4. So, we're at 60% of that or less is what the income of the families have to earn. And then it is formulaic, but typically it's about, people pay about 30% of their income for the rent.
Thank you for your maintenance, and you've had long-term good management over there, and management is always the key. And
Really is. We have a manager there now, and she is a force of nature. And she doesn't, we usually have a waiting list of people who want to live in our properties. And so it's real important that everybody who live in our properties follow the rules. And typically our rules are much longer than the actual lease. I think the lease is like 4 pages and the rules are like 20 or 25 pages. It's real important because if folks don't want to follow the rules of the property, then they need to find someplace else to live. And frankly, most of our residents, they're families with children, and they want a nice, safe place to raise their families, just like everybody wants. And so it's not fair to them or to us to put up with folks who have different feelings about what rules mean.
Well said.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right. Thank you.
Thank you very much. All right. That's it? So I'm gonna make a recommendation that we receive that report. We provided a little bit of input on it. And one quick comment, just if the gas station needs a EIR, I would think a couple GPAs might have some sort of, I'm sorry.
I'm sure staff will go through the process as required by law.
Thank you. I apologize.
Just that.
I could. All right. So do we need a second?
I'd like to make a recommendation that the planning commission receives a report on Sb2 grant. Oh, we did receive reports.
You don't need a motion if you.
Yeah, we don't need a motion. Just we agree.
Sorry.
All right. All right. Moving on. City attorney reports.
I have nothing to report at this meeting. You're welcome.
And thank you for all of the great input and education on environmental process. Director King?
I don't have anything to report at this time.
All right, great. Item 14C is our future agenda items. Director King?
Great. So we have a few items that are coming before you, and I understand that we have a couple of speaker cards for one of the items. I just wanted to let them know that this is not a public hearing. This is just to identify what projects are coming before the Planning Commission in the future. Just to let them know, the American Legion project itself is scheduled for August 17th Planning Commission meeting.
And we could still have them speak. Yeah.
So with that, we have H&H Plastics coming before you. Dave's Hot Chicken. It's another restaurant, and D.R. Horton is going to move forward on their Heritage Point project. So we have more development, more single family coming for you.
Excellent.
And then Chair, I would just say to the members of the public that are here to comment on the American Legion item, that item will be scheduled for a noticed public hearing where your testimony will be received and considered by the Planning Commission. While you're certainly welcome to give public comment on any item on the agenda, including that one, insofar as you want to give testimony in support of the project, just know that that would be the appropriate time to do that. Just letting you guys know that that's when they're going to be receiving testimony. That's when they can receive testimony. But obviously public comment is required under the Brown Act for anything on the agenda.
Would you like to say anything on it right now? All right, please come up. Yeah, I'm just saying you've put in the time, please.
And Casella. I am the Vice Commander at the American Legion Post 53. I've been a member of American Legion for 17 years. And this is my fourth post. It's the only post I've ever been to that doesn't have bar for their members. We are a strict private club. Our veterans and their families are the ones we serve on a regular daily basis. And we are there every day. We're open every day for them to come in and give us any information that they want us to help them with. Excuse me for my shaking. I just want the commission to know that I started this project in January of this year. I've been put off, required paperwork that they said I was not having to have to put in. And so I applied everything. I just did it as they requested. They did not give us a date. This is the first time I heard about a date that we're going to be actually on the agenda. So that's the reason I'm here, is because I wanted to know when we're going on the agenda. Now I know that, and I appreciate that very much. We have a lot of veterans in this area. We have 423 members in the Hemet area. So we do serve a lot of people. And part of our revenue is the bingo, which I just acquired all the licenses. I even have my ABC already. So I'm just waiting for the CUP to open up. But I did ABC, I did all the paperwork for that. We got our license, we've had our inspection, we've had our fire inspection, we did all kinds of things. We have a manager for our bar that's here and is supporting everything that we do. And I just wanted to let you know that we've been in this process for a long time, and we understand that there's a lot of paperwork involved in it. Believe me, I know. And I drive to Riverside at least 3 times a week just to make sure everything is good with the ABC. And we've got our fire stuff all done. We're all certified all the way around. The only thing we are doing now is we're building a bar, but we'd like to have an opening date. And that's what I'm asking for with you guys, is please, we've done this for a long time, and I'm really adamant about follow through. And I've called the planning division at least once a week since February to get this onto the agenda, to find out what paperwork I needed, to get that paperwork in, make sure it's right. And so far, we're still on the agenda. We're still waiting for our agenda. So thank you.
Well, I would say that based on your stick-to-itiveness tonight, for almost 3 hours, it's pretty impressive. So we're looking forward to seeing this on August 17th. So.
I am too. We will be there.
And as a veteran, thank you for everything that you guys do.
Thank you.
Members of the commission. My name is Terry Larned, and I'm also a member of the Post. And I've been following through with all this paperwork that has to go through, because I'm a notary. So every time they need something notarized, I have to come down and make sure everything is notarized properly. And this is for the veterans. This is not for the general public. This is not open for the general public. This is just for the members. We have the post over in San Jacinto, and they've got their bar. We have been dry since conception, since we've been open, and since 2000, I'm sorry, 1919, I think it was 1919. So we've been in this valley for an awful long time. And the building itself was over at the March Air Force Base at the training center. And that's where Bob Hope used to come by, and they would, before they went overseas, they would try out their routines right there at March Air Force Base. So in the 40s, we had that moved from March Air Force Base here to Hemet. So it has a lot of history. When you look at that stage, you know, knowing that Bob Hope and a lot of the other comedians were up on that stage, you know, it's really impressive. But like I say, this is for the veterans. This is not for the general public. And I mean, the Elks Club, you go there and you have to sign in. You have to be a friend of a member of the Elks even to get in there. So this is going to be the same type of deal. And like she said, she's been on this thing, trying to get this thing pushed through. And she says, oh, we've got another obstacle. So we're just trying to make sure that we got a date. Now we do. And now we know that. And that's good. I appreciate that. And we're just trying to show our support. Thank you.
Thank you guys again for sticking through this meeting and for coming to speak. So we look forward to, once again, August 17th, and we'll see you then.
Thank
Very
you.
good. All right. Director King, Commissioner reports.
Sure. Commissioner Hill.
I'd just like to bring it to everybody's attention that our Mayor, Carly Meyer, we have instituted a meal train for Carly Meyer. And if you're interested in doing that, you could go to her Facebook page and it gives you a link to the meal train. And so we're trying to organize getting meals to her and her family at least every other night right now. And if you want any further information on that, you can get a hold of me. My wife is actually coordinating that effort. So look for it on the Facebook page. And if you run into any issues there, get a hold of me. Thank you.
Commissioner Lemke.
Nothing to report.
Commissioner Beamsterfer.
Just like Commissioner Hill said, just prayer and support for Carly Myers as she goes through these trying times. Nothing else to report.
Vice Chair Van Arsdale.
Nothing to report.
Chair Worth.
Nothing to report. So if there's nothing more, then we'll be adjourned until August 17th. See the American Legion. Thank you. August 17th. August
17th is correct. We don't have any items on August 3rd.
I mean, don't be so